Oh, well, the data about police brutality and systemic racism are raging across the world. The RCMP Commissioner, Brenda Lucki, denies there's systemic racism in the RCMP. She says there may be unconscious bias, but is that a distinction without a difference, a way to avoid the deep-seated issues afflicting that force and others? How can real change happen if the head of the RCMP denies there's a systemic problem? And then there's the question of defunding the police. The mayor of Vancouver today demanded a comprehensive review of policing in order to get some better data on systemic racism. But what is he prepared to do about it? Let's find out. The Vancouver Mayor Kennedy Stewart joins us now. Mayor, always good to have you back on the program. Hope you and your loved ones are doing well. You're calling for a comprehensive review. Do you believe there's systemic racism in the Vancouver police force?
I believe every institution has systemic racism in it. I mean, I sat in Parliament for 7 years. I was on an Indigenous Affairs Committee that had no Indigenous people on it. The Parliament does not represent the larger population for a reason, and it starts at the top and it moves all the way through our provincial and municipal organizations. There's systemic racism. It's clear, and we have to make it equal. We have to make sure that people are treated equally and to get that out of our systems.
So what's the purpose of the comprehensive review? Are you looking for evidence of systemic racism, or if you believe it, are you looking for rationale for, quote, the defunding the police / reallocating resources?
Yeah, it's a good question that you're asking there. Look, we've been focusing on the federal and municipal aspects of policing, but really, if you look at the whole distribution of power when it comes to policing, 5% is at the local level, 95% sits with the province. So, although the cities pay for the police in our province anyway, that level of service is determined by the provincial government. So if we decide, for some reason, if we wanted to defund the police, the province would step in and they would say, nope, sorry, this is the level you have to fund it. And they've done it in the past. So it's not a theoretical discussion. They appoint all the boards. They appoint the oversight officers. They write all the legislation. And yet they've somehow avoided this conversation about systemic racism in policing. The other side of it is, say we've made some good moves here in Vancouver. I mean, we've been a focus of attention, and I think the police board here has made some moves. But there's a fragmentation of policing across this province, and so it has to be consistent across municipalities. So that's why I've called for a comprehensive review from the province, because we're really at a watershed here. We've had thousands of people in the streets peacefully calling for reform. We've had incidents of racist actions by the police, found by courts, found by investigating bodies right across the province. And it's time the province got involved here and took a look at how we may restructure policing in this province.
But the Vancouver Police Board that you just described, just as recently as I think in the last 30 days, refused a 1% cut from its budget. I mean, I think you're the head of the police board. I know you don't have total control over it. But if they're refusing a 1% cut, how do you think they're really going to respond to a lot of the public there saying, when we say defund, let's reallocate resources, if 1% got nowhere?
Yeah, that's right. But in the end, like I said, there's been instances here in British Columbia where a local police board has said, we're not going to increase our budgets a certain amount, and the province has stepped in and said, you have to increase it. So really, there is a debate going on here between the city and the police board about a small amount of funding. But overall, like the overall approach, like, for example, you call 911 because you see a homeless person in front of your store, it automatically triggers a police response. It should automatically trigger a response of a homeless outreach team to help that person, in my view. However, we can't change that. That is only the province that can change how 911 works, for example.
Right. Okay, just real quick for time. Do you support body cams on officers?
I've been canvassing that all week with both advocates, from civil liberties associations and others. There is there's no agreement that that's going to help. And the other thing, in Vancouver, it would add about $5 million onto our annual policing costs. That's the estimate I've been given.
Right.
So that's a huge increase in funding for something we don't know whether or not it works. It'd be much better to invest in things like housing for homeless folks and mental health services, so we can reduce the number of calls overall. But really, that's the province.
Just because
Yeah, go ahead.
just because we've got the premiers talking to the prime minister tonight, and you and I had this conversation that municipalities need a lot of money. The prime minister said there's $14 billion for reopening to all the provinces, but it's got strings attached for PPE, for sick leave, 10-day sick leave. I know your city's dealing with many difficulties. Is that enough?
So I really applaud the finance minister who, on the Big City Mayors, we had a conference call. He joined in. We really thanked him for coming to the table for this $14 billion. But the province has to make sure that this money, some of it at least, flows through to our operating budgets at the civic level. And no such agreements has been made, which is very disappointing. We're suffering major losses here in cities all across Canada. And we've already laid off thousands and thousands and thousands of staff. And this is going to impact them, but also the larger economy. So that's what we've got to do, flow it through the municipalities.
Yeah, well, we'll find out. Again, I remind people that cities can't go into deficit for operating expenses. Mayor Kennedy Stewart in Vancouver, always good to have you on the program, sir. Thanks so much.
Thank you.